Hello there, and welcome to Sleepy Galaxy Channel. Tonight we ask a question that sounds almost like a riddle whispered at the edge of sleep. What would you actually see falling into Saturn's rings? And the answer undoes the fear folded into that question. Because there is no falling here in the way your body remembers falling. No rush of air, no floor rising up to meet you, no sudden drop through empty dark. There is only drifting, unhurried and endless, through a hush of ice that never quite lands. A blizzard with nowhere urgent to be, and no one waiting on the far side of it. We have 4 regions to drift through tonight, and you do not need to remember any of them. First, the far approach, where Saturn hangs in the black like a lantern seen through frosted glass, and we let its size settle into us from a safe, restful distance. Then, into the blizzard, where the rings stop being a single golden band and dissolve into billions of separate, tumbling flakes of ice, each one its own small, hushed world. After that, the clockwork of ice, where we notice the gaps and grooves and waves combed into the rings by moons too small to worry about, patterns as patient as breathing. And last, deep time and quiet knowing, where we wonder, without any hurry to answer, how old this frozen river really is, and how humans came to see it at all. You can let all 4 of these go now, right at the start, because I will carry them for you. You don't have to hold on to a single one. If this kind of night helps you rest, a like or a subscribe helps the channel reach others who are also lying awake somewhere, staring at a ceiling, wanting a longer, softer road into sleep than the one they usually get. There's no need to do anything about that thought right now. There is nothing here to hold on to, and nothing here that needs holding. Saturn's rings are made of ice and stone, tumbling in a hush so vast it swallows every trace of sound. And tonight that hush becomes a place for you to rest your attention completely. Let your shoulders ease down into whatever is beneath them. Let your jaw unclench. Let your hands go open and unclaimed. Let the muscles around your eyes forget what they were doing. Let your breathing find its own low rhythm, unwatched, unhurried, needing no instruction from you. Feel the weight of the blanket the way a snowflake might feel the pull of a much larger, kinder gravity, not falling fast, just settling, unhurried, towards something warm. Settle in. Let's begin. Let your breath settle now, the way a held page settles once you stop turning it, and let your body sink one last time into the mattress beneath you. Because from here, you will not need it for a while. Nothing tonight will ask anything of your muscles or your thoughts. You are only going to look, and drift, and be carried, and if at any point you fall fully asleep before we arrive anywhere at all, that is not a failure of this journey. That is the journey working exactly as it was built to. So picture, first, only darkness. A wide, patient darkness. The kind that has no edges and asks nothing of your eyes. And then, very far ahead, a small warmth begins to bloom in it. Not a light exactly. More the memory of one honey-colored, spreading the unhurried way warmth spreads through a cup before you've noticed you're holding it. That warmth is Saturn, and you are already, without any effort of your own, floating toward it, the way a thought floats up out of the dark just before a dream begins to take its shape. You find yourself simply arriving at a vantage point high above the planet, far enough away that nothing about its size can startle you, close enough that its color has become the whole of your view. It is gold. Not the hard gold of metal, but the gold of late afternoon light caught inside something soft, pale amber bands lying one over another. Cream and honey and the faintest rust, wrapped around the planet in long, unhurried stripes, like a world dressed for rest. This is the second largest planet that circles our sun, a body so vast that more than 700 Earths could be tucked inside its curve, and yet it is made of something so light, so full of gas and open space, that if you could find an ocean wide enough to hold it, this entire enormous world would rest on the surface and float. Let that settle in you for a moment the way a stone does not. This giant, this second largest of all the planets, weightless enough to bob on water, huge and yet, in its own way, buoyant. Nothing about it presses down. Nothing about it needs to be carried. It simply floats, the way you are floating now, here, above it, held up by nothing but its own light, open, breathing weight. There is no wind on your skin here, no true up or down, and yet the whole scene reads to you the way a held breath reads to a tired body, as permission rather than as effort. Your only task, if it can even be called a task, is to keep watching, the way you might watch a candle across a dim room without once needing to walk toward it. And circling that golden, floating giant, you begin to notice something else, a pale halo, thin as breath on glass, wrapped around its middle in perfect, patient rings. From this distance they look almost solid, a silver-white disk balanced on the planet's equator, catching what little light reaches this far out and turning it into something that glows rather than shines. But look closer, or rather, let your attention soften and widen at once, the way it does in the last minute before sleep, and you will start to sense the truth of what you're seeing. That halo is not a solid thing at all. It has never been solid. It is snow. Not falling snow, not the kind that drifts down onto a rooftop and settles into stillness. This is a blizzard that never lands, because there is no ground beneath it to land on, only the endless open circling of orbit, going around and around a planet that offers no floor to catch it. Every particle of ice out there, and there are more of them than any number could comfortably hold in a drowsy mind, is caught in its own private orbit, tracing the same unhurried circle again and again, forever falling toward Saturn and forever missing it, the way a coin never quite finishes rolling down the inside of a bowl. It is a storm that has been going for longer than there have been eyes to watch it, and it will keep going long after tonight, faint and continuous, wrapping the golden planet in a scarf of drifting light that never once comes to rest against its surface. Try, for a moment, to hold both halves of that thought at once, the way you might hold two ends of the same warm blanket, a storm, and yet nothing that could ever touch you. A blizzard, and yet one with no wind, no sting, no cold biting through it, only ice, turning and turning in long, easy loops, keeping its distance from the world it circles the same way your own thoughts, tonight, are learning to keep their distance from tomorrow. Let that image settle into you now, because it will stay with us the whole night, returning without any need for you to fetch it, the way a familiar tune returns on its own. An endless blizzard of ice, circling and circling, falling and falling, and never once landing. There is something in that image built specifically for a mind that is trying to let go of the day, a storm with nowhere to arrive, motion with nothing urgent inside it, a kind of falling that never demands an ending. You do not need to understand rings or gravity or ice to feel what that means. You only need to notice that some things can move forever, tenderly, and never once crash, never once stop, and never once need to. And this is the part of the night where I remind you, plainly and without any need to remember it later, nothing here can reach you. This is a thought journey, built only of picture and voice, and your body stays exactly where it is, warm, held, safe, while only your attention wanders out ahead of it. There is no true distance to cross, no true cold to feel, no true vacuum pressing anywhere near you. If Saturn is real and its rings are real, then the danger of them is not here, not tonight. Because you are not really there, you are only imagining being there, from the safest seat that exists, which is the inside of your own resting mind. So whatever this golden planet is, whatever waits inside its blizzard of ancient ice, you are allowed to watch it the way you'd watch snow fall outside a window you know is closed. Curious, unbothered, entirely safe. You might notice, even now, a small easing somewhere behind your ribs, the kind that comes when a mind finally accepts an invitation it had been quietly suspicious of. That easing is allowed too. There is nothing out here to defend against, no test waiting at the far end of this thought, no version of tonight where you are asked to perform, or hurry, or hold anything up. There is only the golden planet, and the pale storm around it, and you, watching from a seat that cannot fall. From up here, the whole scene has the hush of something seen from very far above, the kind of hush that comes over a room once everyone in it has finally stopped talking. Saturn turns beneath its rings unhurried, wrapped in cloud the color of weak tea and old parchment, and around its middle that pale disk of endless snow keeps its patient revolution, catching light along one edge, losing it along the other, an enormous, quiet machine built only of ice and distance and time. There is no sound out here, of course. Space keeps none for you to hear, but if there were, you might imagine it as something very close to silence itself. Not an absence, but a kind of held breath. The same held breath a room takes on right before someone you love falls asleep beside you. You do not need to do anything to move closer. That is the peculiar tenderness of this kind of drifting. It happens to you, rather than requiring you. Some faint current beneath your attention, one as old and unhurried as the blizzard itself, begins to draw you downward and forward and in, the way a leaf on still water begins to turn toward a drain it cannot see and does not fear. The golden curve of the planet swells almost imperceptibly at the edges of your vision. The pale halo of rings begins, patiently, to widen, to separate itself from the idea of a single line and become, instead, a place, a plane, a flattened field of drifting light stretched out ahead of you, waiting, and so you let it happen. You let the small warmth of Saturn pull you closer, the way a familiar voice pulls a half-asleep mind back toward the surface of a dream, not urgently, not with any force, just steadily, the way water finds the lowest point in a landscape without ever hurrying to get there. The blizzard ahead of you does not rush to meet you either. It has been circling, patient and unbroken, for longer than memory holds, and it will still be circling long after you have drifted past it into sleep. There is no schedule to this arrival, no clock ticking anywhere in it, only the long, easy pull of that golden light, and the pale storm wrapped around it, growing wider and nearer with every unhurried breath you take. All that is asked of you now is to keep drifting, to let the light grow wider, nearer, dearer, until the flat, pale plane of the rings lies directly ahead of you, close enough that you can almost feel, without any threat in the feeling, the hush of 1,000,000 flakes of ancient ice turning in the dark, waiting for you to come find out, at last, just how thin that endless blizzard really is. And already you can feel that drift take hold of you, the way a leaf feels the current before it ever moves, and now the golden curve of Saturn begins to slide beneath your resting body, closer with every unhurried breath. There is no falling here, not the kind that startles a sleeper awake, only a long glide, a lowering, the way a hand settles onto a pillow instead of dropping onto it. You cross above the ring plane, the way you might cross above a frozen lake seen from a hillside. And at first, the blizzard looks almost solid, a pale golden disk stitched with faint darker seams, wide enough to swallow the distance between continents many times over. 280,000 kilometers, tip to outer tip, a width that would let you lay this one storm of ice across the gap between Earth and its own moon and still have room left at either edge. And yet, drifting closer, you begin to notice the thing that makes this blizzard so strange, so oddly tender. For something built from countless separate pieces of frozen water, it has almost no thickness at all. 10 to 30 meters in places. That is all. A ring wider than worlds, and in its thinnest reaches barely taller than the trees outside the window you fell asleep beside. If you could shrink this whole shining structure down to the size of a single sheet of paper spread across a football field, the paper would still be thicker than the rings are, relative to their span, a fact so gently absurd that it asks nothing more of you than a small, unhurried wonder before it lets you keep drifting. And this is why, as your vantage begins to tip and the angle changes, the entire blizzard seems to vanish. Seen edge on, this vast snowfall, this ring system big enough to hold moons in its gaps, thins into a single faint line of light laid across the dark, a thread of brightness so fine it could almost be mistaken for nothing at all, for an idea of a ring rather than the ring itself. You watch it happen slowly, the great golden sheet folding itself down toward invisibility. And there is something in that vanishing that feels like watching your own breath even out before sleep. Something enormous quietly reducing itself to almost nothing, and no less real for doing so. You drift on, and the angle opens again, and the line of light blooms back into its full pale width, the blizzard restored, patient as ever, unbothered by having disappeared and returned. Beneath it now, filling the whole lower half of your view, Saturn itself is turning faster than seems fair for something so large, faster than the world you left behind ever turns. A single day here lasts only about 10.5 hours, dawn to dawn, so that if you simply lingered here and watched, you would see the planet complete nearly an entire spin in the time it might take you to read a bedtime story twice through. That speed does not feel frantic from where you rest. It simply means the bands of cloud beneath you are always sliding, always in soft procession. Streaked amber and pale gold and the faintest cream, one belt overtaking another the way slow, low music moves through its own repeating phrase. Those bands are storms, if you want to call them that, though nothing about them should trouble the part of you that is already half asleep. They are enormous, some of them wider than the earth itself, but they are also far away, and distance has a way of turning even the largest weather into something you could watch the way you'd watch smoke curl from a chimney on a windless evening. Saturn's storms churn for years, for decades, stirred by heat rising unhurried from the planet's deep, hidden interior. And yet from up here, they read simply as color, long amber streaks easing into paler gold, a hexagon of cloud circling the far pole in a shape too patient and too strange to ever feel like a threat, only like a puzzle the sky has been quietly holding for longer than anyone has been alive to ask about it. 6 straight sides, corner folding into corner, a wind pattern that has kept its shape for as long as any watching eye has measured it, and even that, from where you rest, reads not as mystery to be solved, but as a kind of lullaby geometry, a shape the atmosphere hums to itself out of habit. This is a world so light, remember, that were there an ocean wide enough to hold it, it would float. A giant made mostly of gas, mostly of hydrogen and helium thinned out until its own average density falls below that of water, so that the storms below you are less like the heavy weather you have known, and more like patterns pressed into something closer to breath than to stone. Threaded through all of it is a haze, faint and constant, made of tiny crystals of ammonia drawn up from below and cooled into a fine mist that softens every edge you look at. It is this haze that gives Saturn its low, buttery glow, the reason the whole planet seems to be lit from a lamp turned down for the night, rather than by any harsh, direct sun. Beneath that upper haze lie deeper decks of cloud, unseen from here, layered like blankets folded one over another, colder ammonia ice riding above, a hidden layer of ammonium hydrosulfide further down, and beneath even that a warmer floor of water cloud that no eye above will ever glimpse directly, only sense as a kind of warmth implied beneath the visible gold. The clouds turn beneath that haze patient and endless, gold folding into gold, and you find yourself simply watching them the way you might watch a fire settle into embers. No need to understand every current, only to let the slow motion carry your attention wherever it wants to go. 10.5 hours, and the whole scene will have cycled once. A day shorter than most nights you have ever slept through, and yet none of it asks you to hurry. Time moves quickly for the planet and unhurried for you, the two speeds resting comfortably side by side, the way a river can rush past a stone that never moves at all. For a while you let Saturn's turning cloud be the whole of your world, and then, without any effort of your own, your gaze lifts back to the thread of light above it, that impossibly thin blizzard, still holding its two shapes at once, vast and almost non-existent, depending only on the angle from which it is seen. You begin to understand, resting here, that this thinness is not a flaw in the blizzard's design, but almost its whole nature. A storm of snow that never lands must, in some sense, stay disciplined, every flake circling flat and level, none straying far above or below the plane the others have agreed to share, shepherded into that narrow band by nothing more than the quiet, patient pull of gravity and the countless soft collisions of ice against ice, each nudge correcting the last, over and over, for longer than there have been eyes anywhere to watch it happen. It is less like a wall of snow and more like a single vast breath held level and still, held, and yet made entirely of movement. And it is toward the edge of that held breath that you now feel yourself tipping, the way a boat tips when the current beneath it finally decides which way to carry it. Saturn's amber turning begins to slide out of the center of your view, and the thread of light above you widens again, resolving itself back into its full pale sheet, closer now than it has ever been, close enough that the line is beginning to soften into something with texture, something with grain, something that is no longer simply light, but is starting, unmistakably, to look like snow. Distance falls away in the unhurried way distance always does in a dream, not measured in numbers anymore, only in the sense that something once far is now becoming near, the way a familiar voice grows clearer as it crosses a room toward you. You are being carried toward the outer fringe of it, toward the farthest, faintest reach of the A-ring, the outermost of the great bright bands, where the blizzard first begins in earnest, thin and scattered and sparkling, its first flakes catching what light there is, and holding it, waiting, the way the first few flurries of any storm seem to linger before more decide to follow. Your descent is not a fall. It has never been a fall. It is simply a lowering toward that fringe, cradled, the whole long glide narrowing now toward a single low threshold. The place where distant golden light gives way at last to something you will be able to see up close. Saturn's turning storms recede behind you, folding themselves back into color and haze, and the great thin sheet above resolves, flake by unseen flake, into something with edges, something with weight, something waiting. Ice, real and near and drifting, the first snowflakes of a blizzard that has been circling, patient as ever, long before you arrived, and that will go on circling long after this night has eased you into sleep, a blizzard with room enough, now, for you. And now the outer fringe of that great ring is close enough to touch, and the blizzard stops being an idea and becomes a place. This is the part your mind may have imagined wrong, for years, without ever meaning to. From far above, the rings looked like a single pale sheet, smooth as poured light. Up close, that sheet dissolves. There is no sheet at all. There is only snow, an unbroken population of separate individual bodies, each one its own small world of ice, spread so widely and so evenly that from a distance they blurred into one continuous shine. You are not approaching a surface. You are entering a crowd, and every member of that crowd is falling in its own slow, endless orbit, keeping its own quiet company with the sun. Let your eyes adjust the way they would in an unfamiliar room, and shapes begin to separate out of the glow. Nearest to you, and smallest, are flecks no larger than grains of dust, catching light so faintly they seem more like a held breath than an object. A little further, motes the size of sand, then pebbles, then something you could hold in two hands, tumbling end over end with the unhurried patience of a leaf deciding how to fall. And scattered among all of this smallness, further apart, are the giants of the blizzard, clumps of ice as large as a car, as large as a house, pale boulders drifting with the same weightless calm as the dust beside them. Because out here, size changes nothing about how gently a thing is allowed to move. Almost all of it, from the faintest fleck to the largest drifting block, is nearly pure water ice, and nearly all of it is bright, not glinting like glass, but soft and matte and radiant all at once, the way fresh. Untouched snow looks under a clear morning sky before anything has walked across it, before anything has had the chance to dim. This is the truth the word blizzard was always reaching for, even before you understood how literally it applied. A real blizzard, the kind that might once have pressed cold against a window somewhere on the small blue world you came from, is exactly this: countless separate flakes, none of them touching the ground, none of them landing, held instead in ceaseless, swirling motion around each other. Saturn's rings are that image made enormous and made eternal, a blizzard with no ground beneath it to catch a single flake, so that falling here does not mean arriving. It means belonging to the storm. Every fleck of ice around you is doing what snow does in the instant before it lands, except that instant, here, never ends. It simply continues, orbit after orbit, circling a planet that never asked any of it to stop. And here is the detail that might loosen something tight in your chest, if you are carrying anything tight tonight. All of this ocean of separate bodies, all this shimmering multitude, moves with a gentleness that is almost impossible to picture from where you once stood on solid ground. Neighboring pieces of ice, passing close to one another, are not colliding the way you might imagine a collision. They drift past each other, brush against each other, sometimes rest against each other for a while, at speeds measured in millimeters per second. Think of how slowly a single snowflake settles onto another snowflake already resting on a sill. No impact, no sound, just the softest possible meeting of two things that were always going to meet eventually, and now have. That is the speed at which this entire blizzard moves against itself. Not stillness, exactly. Everything here is in motion, always. But a motion so unhurried, so without urgency, that touch becomes indistinguishable from tenderness. Ice meeting ice the way two eyelids meet in the last moment before sleep. It is strange to think that something built from trillions of separate pieces, spread across a plane wider than the distance between many worlds, could be called gentle. But scale does not create violence by itself. What creates violence is speed relative to what is nearby. And out here, nothing is fast relative to its neighbor. Every flake shares almost exactly the same path, the same pace, the same unbroken agreement with gravity, so that even though the whole system races around Saturn far faster than anything on the world you came from ever moved, the flake beside you might as well be standing still at your shoulder. You could reach toward it, in this dream, and it would drift into your palm with no more force than a snowflake landing on an open, upturned hand. The blizzard is real. Every fact about it is real. The ice, the size, the countless number of separate bodies. And yet, none of it can hurt you. Because none of it is moving against you. It is moving with you, the way a river carries a leaf without ever pressing against it. So let that be the shape of this place settling into you now. Not a wall of danger to pass through, but a vast, patient company of ice. Each piece its own small companion in the dark. Each one bright, each one unhurried, each one falling forever and arriving nowhere. You could drift here for a very long time and never once feel the sharp edge of anything. Because out here, edges have been worn smooth by time and distance, and the endless, feather-light patience of these small, gentle meetings. Notice, too, how much space each flake keeps around itself, even in a crowd this large. It would be easy to imagine the rings as packed tight, shoulder to shoulder, ice pressed against ice, without room to breathe. But that is not what surrounds you here. Between one piece of ice and the next there is often a long, open reach of nothing, a hush of empty dark before the next small shape catches the light again. The blizzard is enormous in its numbers and almost entirely made of space, the way a hushed snowfall over an open field is mostly the field, mostly the air, with the snow itself only a scattering of small, bright interruptions in it. You could drift for whole minutes in this dream. Between one house-sized boulder and the next, passing through nothing but hush and starlight, before the following flake ever announced itself. It is a crowd, yes, but a crowd that has learned, over a very long time, exactly how to keep its distance, exactly how much room every member needs in order never to press too hard against its neighbor. And within that spaciousness, no two pieces of ice are quite alike, though all of them are kin. Some are worn round by countless tender meetings, smoothed the way a stone is smoothed by a patient river, their surfaces rubbed to a matte, sugar-like glow. Others hold rougher, more angular faces, edges caught mid-formation, as though they have not yet had time to be gentled into roundness by the blizzard around them, though they will, given centuries, given the same unhurried patience that shaped all the rest. A few of the larger blocks seem almost to gather smaller companions around themselves, tiny flakes settling near a boulder the way loose snow gathers at the base of a larger drift, held there not by any hard grip, but by the faintest, most delicate pull of gravity, a pull so weak it could be undone by the lightest touch, and yet patient enough to hold its small company together for now. Every one of these shapes, round or rough, small or vast, was once part of something else entirely, and every one of them will, in its own lingering time, become part of something else again. But none of that needs to concern you tonight. Tonight, they are simply here, drifting beside you, unhurried, unbroken, entirely at ease. If you let your attention soften even further, you might notice that the blizzard has a kind of hush to it that has nothing to do with silence, because of course there is no sound out here at all, no medium for sound to travel through. Only the visual hush of motion so slow it reads as stillness. Snow, on the world you came from, made a particular kind of quiet when it fell, a hush that seemed to soften every other sound in the world along with it, blanketing a street, a room, a whole night, in the same low, muffled hush. This blizzard offers that same feeling, translated into light instead of sound, into the faint visual settling of ice instead of the muffling of noise. Everything around you is moving, and yet everything around you feels held, unhurried, at rest within its own motion, the way your own breathing can be moving and still feel like rest. And once your eyes have settled into the shapes of the ice itself, another question rises quietly, the way a question does just before sleep. Not urgent, just curious, just there. If all of this is snow, uncountable and scattered and dim from any great distance, then where does its brightness actually come from? Out here, so very far from home, there is a sun doing its old familiar work, its light traveling a long, long way across the dark before it ever reaches this drifting field of ice. And what that light does when it finally arrives, how it slips between one flake and the next, how it catches the curve of a boulder-sized chunk of ice and lets it glow, how it leaves long, soft shadows lying across the plain like something remembered rather than seen. That is the part of the blizzard still waiting to reveal itself as your slow drift carries you further in, deeper into the glittering hush of the rings. And because every flake in this endless blizzard is honest water ice, what happens next is only natural. The sun finds it, and the sun cannot help but light it up. You notice this before you notice almost anything else, the way a single distant star, 90 times fainter here than it ever felt on Earth, still manages to turn 10 trillion floating specks of frost into something luminous. Sunlight does not simply bounce off the ring plane the way it bounces off a mirror. It falls in at a shallow angle, slips between one flake and the next, catches the curved face of an ice lump the size of a fist, glances off a boulder the size of a room, and scatters outward in 100,000 small departures before any of it reaches your eyes. What you actually see, drifting here at the edge of the blizzard, is not one bright surface, but an entire depth of small brightnesses, layered like breath on glass, each flake keeping and releasing its own private share of daylight. There is no single moment when the light arrives, and no single moment when it leaves. It is closer to a conversation carried on between countless small surfaces, one flake passing a borrowed gleam to the next, that one passing it onward again, a relay with no beginning you could ever point to and no end either, only this ongoing, endlessly gentle handoff of brightness across the whole width of the ring. You find, watching it, that your eyes do not know quite where to settle. There is a boulder catching a hard, clean highlight along one curved edge. There is a loose gathering of smaller flakes beside it, each one dimmer, each one contributing only a whisper of light, so that together they read less like solid shapes and more like a fine mist that happens to shine. Between them, tiny gaps of true dark, where for a moment no flake stands between you and the black beyond. It is this mixture, bright, dim, dark, bright again, that gives the blizzard its particular shimmer, closer to the surface of moving water under a low sun than to any single sheet of snow. Some of that light never leaves the system at all. It slides past you, past the outer rings, and lands instead on the vast curve of Saturn itself, on the hemisphere that has already turned its face away from the sun. And there, on that night side, something quietly beautiful happens. The rings become a second, gentler sun. Astronomers call this hush of reflected light ring shine, and it is real, a soft wash of illumination cast down from the very blizzard you are moving through, bright enough to touch the tops of Saturn's clouds and lift them, just slightly, out of full darkness. If you were to look down at the planet's shadowed half right now, you would not see blackness. You would see amber and pale gold, dim as a hallway light left on for a sleeping child, put there by nothing but scattered ice, 10 and more thousand kilometers overhead, giving back a little of what it borrowed. Saturn, in its turn, offers something back to you. The planet is so wide, and its clouds so pale, that it too becomes a kind of lamp, a second source of glow lighting the underside of the very ring you are drifting through. Planet shine. The mirror image of what the rings just gave the planet. Between the two of them, the blizzard is never fully dark, even on the sides that face away from the sun. There is always some faint contribution arriving from somewhere, starlight from far beyond the whole system, planet shine from below, the ring's own scattered brightness moving sideways from flake to flake. You are held, in other words, inside a soft exchange of light that has no true off switch, only brighter and dimmer, a rhythm as patient and unbroken as slow breathing. The rings do this in a different way too at certain times, in a way that unfolds over years rather than hours. Twice in each long Saturnian year, the planet tips its shoulder so precisely that the sun sits exactly on the ring plane, neither above it nor below, and this is called equinox. At equinox, the blizzard you are drifting through goes strange and beautiful. Every flake, every boulder, every gathered clump begins to throw a shadow, long and blue and impossibly thin, stretching for kilometers across ice that only a moment before, in ring time, lay flat and unshadowed. You are held in this scene as though inside a field at very low winter sun, when every blade of grass suddenly owns a shadow twice its height. Except here, the grass is a moon's worth of ice, and the shadows fall not on soil, but on more ice, blue on white on gold, for as long as the geometry allows, before the planet tips gently onward and the shadows shorten again. This particular slant of light does something else too. Something quietly useful as well as lovely. With the sun sitting edge onto the ring plane instead of high above it, even the smallest ridge of packed ice, even a low rise of gathered flakes only a few dozen meters tall, throws a shadow long enough to see from far away. For the brief stretch of each equinox, the blizzard reveals its own hidden topography. Every gentle heap, every quiet mounding of ice that self-gravity has coaxed into being, suddenly outlined in blue, where moments before it lay flat and unremarkable under the ordinary high angle of an ordinary ring day. It is as though the whole storm, for a handful of unhurried weeks, agrees to show you its texture before folding it away again into that same flat and dazzling plane. You might wonder what all this scattering and shadowing does to the flakes themselves, whether the light wears on them, whether the endless soft contact between neighbors leaves any mark. It does, in the smallest way, and then it is undone. Each time two particles touch, and remember, they touch as gently as settling snow, barely faster than a heartbeat's worth of drift. A little of the bright outer frost is disturbed, packed down, dulled by nearness to its neighbor. But the sun keeps arriving. Micrometeorite dust that might otherwise darken the ice is worn thin by the same slow bombardment of sunlight and radiation, and fresh, fine frost keeps settling out across every surface, so that within some handful of years each flake has re-whitened itself, brightened back to that same startling snow-fresh gleam it wore before. The blizzard, it turns out, forgives itself constantly. Nothing here stays dulled. Nothing here stays touched. Every collision heals into brightness again, over and over, on a schedule far longer than a single night's sleep, but far shorter than the ring's whole life. A private, unhurried rhythm of dimming and renewal that never needs anyone to notice it happening. And it is cold here, you should know that, drifting as close as you now are, out at this distance from the sun, in the open dark between the flakes. The ice around you sits near -180 degrees, a temperature so far past anything a body could stand that the number itself seems to belong to another kind of world entirely. But notice, too, that you feel none of it. This is a journey of the mind, carried on thought rather than skin, and you remain exactly where you began, wrapped, warm, unhurried, your breath even, your body heavy and settled into whatever soft place is holding you as you listen. The cold is a fact you are simply allowed to know, the way you might read that the bottom of the ocean is dark, or that the top of a mountain is thin of air. True and distant and entirely without consequence for you. You can let it sit there, cold and small and harmless, while everything else about this scene continues to glitter. Because it does glitter, that is the part worth staying with. All around you now, this near-frozen blizzard catches whatever light finds it and gives most of that light straight back out again, so that even a single distant star turns the whole ring plane into something closer to a held breath of scattered stars themselves, 100,000 small self-lit points suspended in careful, drifting order. You could stay here a long while simply watching that happen, the shadows lengthening and shortening with the slow tip of a giant world, the ice quietly rebrightening after every gentle touch, the planet's night side glowing faint gold from snow overhead. Nothing asks anything of you here. There is only this steady, self-sustaining exchange of light passing back and forth between world and world again, and you, held safely somewhere just outside of it, free to simply watch. But your drift, patient as it is, keeps carrying you inward still, past this outer hush of scattered light, past the last loose scatter of house-sized boulders, catching the sun one final time, toward a place in the blizzard where the flakes gather closer together, thicker, denser, more crowded than anywhere else in the whole wide ring, toward the deep, glittering heart of the storm, the wide band the sunlight struggles hardest to pass through, the one they call the B ring. And with that frost relit on every grain around you, the pull inward continues, the way your gaze is drawn, in the last minutes before sleep, toward the one part of a dim room that yet holds a little light. You feel the blizzard thicken. You are approaching the heart of it now, the widest and brightest of Saturn's bands, the one that would swallow all the others if it stood alone, the B ring. Here the loose, wide-flung snow of the outer reaches presses closer together, flake finding flake. until the whole field takes on a denser, richer hush, bright enough that if a single beam of sunlight caught it just so, it would seem almost to glow from within, like fresh snow under a full moon on a windless night. Almost everything the whole ring system weighs is gathered into this one wide band, most of the entire blizzard, folded into this single stretch of sky you are now passing through. And yet it asks nothing new of you, pressing on you with no more weight than the last one did, a whole world's worth of snow, and you feel none of it. This is the part of the blizzard where the ice stops behaving like scattered dust and starts, very faintly, to remember that it has weight. Each particle is small, most no larger than a fist or a boulder, but there are so many of them, packed so closely that their own gravity begins to matter, each speck tugging ever so lightly at its neighbors, the way a room full of sleepers under one wide blanket will drift, without meaning to, toward each other's warmth. Picture handfuls of fresh powder loosely cupped together by nothing more than their own eagerness to touch. That is what happens here. On a scale spanning tens of thousands of kilometers, the snow gathers itself into long, wavering ridges and loose drifts, shapes with no fixed edges, forming out of the general blizzard the way a duvet settles into soft folds when a sleeper shifts beneath it. For a long time, these clumping shapes were only guessed at, hidden inside numbers, until astronomers watched starlight blink through the ring as it passed behind, over and over, and noticed the flickering came in a pattern too regular to be random, evidence of countless small gatherings, tens of meters across, leaning into rows like grass combed by a slow wind, too fine to see directly, and yet unmistakably there. In the rare moments when sunlight rakes almost flat across the ring's own edge, some of these drifts stand up as faint wrinkles and shadows a few kilometers high, made of nothing but ice choosing, quietly, to lean against itself. But nothing here ever hardens into permanence. A drift gathers over the span of an hour, its particles briefly closer, briefly leaning on one another under their own faint gravity, and then Saturn's own vast pull, and the endless passing motion of the ring, tugs it apart again, unravels it back into loose falling snow, ready to be gathered into some new shape a little farther along the path. Nothing here piles up. Nothing accumulates into a mountain or a moon. The rings have had hundreds of millions of years to build something solid out of all this ice, and instead, they keep choosing, over and over, the same patient rhythm of coming together and drifting apart, the way a thought might form at the edge of sleep, hold its shape for a moment, and dissolve before it becomes a dream you have to follow. You could rest inside that rhythm. You do not have to hold on to any single shape either. You can let each one form, notice it, and let it go, trusting that another will always be gathering somewhere close behind it. An hour to gather, an hour to come apart, over and over, for as long as this ring has existed, and not once has the pattern needed to be remembered or repeated on purpose. It simply happens, the way your own breathing happens, each cycle complete in itself, owing nothing to the one before it. Even at its thickest, the blizzard is never truly a wall. Drift with your eyes open here, and you would notice the density of the snow changing beneath and around you in long, uneven bands. The way fog over a valley thins in some places and gathers thick in others without ever announcing why. In some stretches, the flakes crowd so close that little daylight finds its way through to whatever lies beneath, and Saturn's own cloud tops, so far below, would show only as a soft amber smear, half hidden behind the falling white. A short way farther on, the same blizzard opens into thinner country, gaps not wide enough to be called clearings, but generous enough to let threads of true sunlight through, laying pale stripes across your path. Nothing about this shifting density is a boundary, only a kind of breathing the whole ring does slowly, changing its own thickness the way a sleeper's chest rises and falls. Never quite the same twice, never in any hurry to be still. Deeper in this same wide ring, something stranger drifts across the snow, pale elongated smudges, sometimes reaching thousands of kilometers long, appearing seemingly out of nothing and fading again within a few hours. These are the spokes, and when the first robotic eyes to pass this way caught sight of them, decades ago, they seemed almost to defy the blizzard's own logic, because the ice-orbiting Saturn should move at different speeds depending on how far out it sits, the inner snow racing ahead, the outer snow trailing behind, and yet a spoke holds its shape as one piece, gliding across the ring nearly as if it were painted onto glass rather than made of countless separate flecks of ice. The answer turned out to be something almost breath-like. The very finest dust in the ring, grains smaller than the width of a hair, can pick up a small electric charge, perhaps from a passing shadow of Saturn's own magnetic field, or a faint interaction where sunlight meets the frozen surface. That charge is enough, for a little while, to lift the dust just above the plane of the blizzard, holding it aloft as though an unseen hand were cupped tenderly beneath it. Seen from a great distance, that raised dust catches the light differently from the ice around it and appears as a long pale shadow shape drifting across the ring, there, and then, as the charge fades and the dust settles back down into the general fall of snow, gone again, the way your own breath fogs for a moment on cold glass and clears. They seem to gather more readily near the turning of Saturn's long seasons, as if the whole ring, too, has its own slow way of sighing. You do not need to understand the physics to feel what a spoke is. Really, it is the blizzard exhaling. A brief lift, a faint blooming of light, an easy settling back into the same unhurried fall. It happens and it passes, and nothing is lost by its passing. Around you, one might be forming even now, some private constellation of dust rising a hair's breadth off the plane, catching starlight, and letting go, with no more urgency than a held breath finding its way back out. And here is the quiet realization worth sitting with as you drift through the very densest part of this whole enormous storm. You are not falling through any of it. Not one flake of this blizzard is striking you. Not one drift is pressing against you. Not one spoke's rising dust brushes your skin. You are not passing through the ring the way a stone might drop through falling snow, cutting a path, disturbing what it touches. You are moving with the ring. Whatever gentle current carried you down from the wide golden curve of Saturn's cloud tops has folded you, without a seam, into the same unhurried motion as the ice itself, so that you and the nearest flake beside you are simply keeping pace, two travelers on the same wide road, neither one overtaking the other. The blizzard rushes onward around Saturn at a speed too vast to picture, and yet, held inside it exactly as you are, none of that speed reaches you as anything but a profound, encompassing hush. The difference between watching a river tear past a fixed rock on its bank and lying back in a small boat that has simply given itself to the current, no longer straining against anything, no longer separate from the water at all. That is the shape of what is carrying you now, deeper into the storm than you have gone yet, past drifts that form and unmake themselves like passing thoughts, past dust that rises for a breath and falls back to rest. You are inside the blizzard, and the blizzard, impossibly, is holding still around you even as it moves, and it is that particular hush, the hush of moving exactly in step with something enormous, that you can let your whole body sink into now. The way you sink into a mattress that has already learned the shape of you, carried onward without a single flake ever quite deciding to land. And because you are moving with the storm and not falling through it, you can let yourself notice, now, what that really means for the body you still carry inside this dream. You are held. Not caught, not stopped, not resting against anything solid, held the way a held breath is held, weightless, complete, needing nothing beneath it. Let your shoulders discover this first. Let them find that there is no floor waiting to take your weight, and that this is not a falling away from safety, but a floating into a wider kind of safety. One that asks nothing of your muscles, your spine, the small tired machinery that all day and every day has been quietly fighting to hold you upright against a world with a ground. Here, there is no ground. Here, there is only orbit, and orbit is the gentlest arrangement a body can be given. Because to orbit, you should know, is simply to fall, forever and without consequence. That is the whole secret of it. A world's gravity reaches out and pulls, the way gravity always pulls, patient and unbroken. But you are moving sideways fast enough that the curve of your falling matches the curve of the world falling away beneath you, and so you fall and never once arrive. Every satellite, every moon, every flake of ice drifting beside you in this long blizzard is caught in exactly that same unfinished fall. It is not a trick of physics performed on you from outside. It is not the absence of gravity. It is gravity, fully present, doing something unexpected with its strength. Instead of gathering you in, it is spinning you an endless, unbroken loop, wide as a held hand, soft as a held breath, and asking you only to keep drifting along its curve. A pull has become a path. A fall has become a place to rest. Feel how strange and how tender that turn is if you let it land in you slowly. Somewhere in your ordinary life, gravity has only ever meant one thing: the floor rising to meet you, the weight of tired evenings pressing down through your legs, the small effort of simply staying upright hour after hour without noticing you were making it. But out here, wrapped in this drifting field of ice, the same invisible hand that pulls apples from branches and holds oceans against their basins has been asked to do something else entirely. It has been asked to cradle, and it obliges patiently, the way it always has, the way it always will, holding this whole slow blizzard of snow that never lands in one long unbroken arc around a golden world, and holding you inside that arc too, as though you had always belonged there. Think for a moment of every falling thing you have ever known: a leaf tipping off a branch, a stone let go over a railing, your own body settling back into a mattress at the end of a long day. Every one of those falls ends the instant it meets a surface. That is what falling has always meant to you: a beginning that is really a countdown, a fall with a floor waiting somewhere at the bottom of it. But the fall you are inside of now has no floor built into its arithmetic at all. Saturn curves away from you exactly as quickly as you curve toward it, forever trading distance for distance, so the fall simply continues, unresolved and unresolving. A sentence that never needs a final word. You could call this the one kind of falling that asks nothing of you afterward. No landing to brace for. No impact to anticipate somewhere in the dark. Only the fall itself, endlessly renewed, endlessly incomplete, and entirely yours to rest inside. You might expect this to feel like speed. It does not. This is perhaps the quietest surprise of the whole night's drifting, although the entire ring plane, every last suspended flake of water ice within it, is sweeping around Saturn at something close to 20 kilometers in a single second, a pace that would blur a mountain range into a smear of color if you stood still and let it pass. You do not feel any of that speed at all, because nothing here is standing still. The flake an arm's length to your left is moving at that same 20 kilometers a second. So is the loose curl of frost drifting just above you, and the shard the size of a house turning unhurried somewhere below, and the whole wide unbroken field of snow reaching out toward the horizon in every direction. When everything around you moves together, at the same pace, along the same vast curve, motion stops meaning anything at all. There is nothing left to measure it against. What remains, once speed has nowhere left to show itself, is only stillness, a stillness built entirely out of motion, which may be the most complete stillness there is, because it is not the stillness of something stopped, but the stillness of something perfectly accompanied. Let that be the whole of it for a moment. You are moving unimaginably fast, and you are utterly at rest, and both of those things are equally true, and neither one is asking anything of you. This is what it is to be carried rather than to carry yourself. All the ordinary labor of movement, the checking of pace, the small corrections, the effort of keeping up, has been handed over to the orbit itself, and the orbit does not tire, and the orbit does not hurry, and the orbit has been drawing this same unbroken loop for longer than there have been eyes anywhere to watch it. You are simply inside it now. A passenger in the most literal, most physical sense the universe allows, falling forever, arriving nowhere, needing to do nothing but let the curve carry you. Somewhere below the storm, you can sense the great amber weight of Saturn itself turning through its own 10.5-hour day, indifferent and enormous, the true source of the pull that holds this whole arrangement together. And yet, from up here, riding the curve with the rest of the blizzard, that pull never once announces itself as force. It arrives only as company, as the simple, steady fact that the flake beside you, and the flake beyond that one, and the whole shining field stretching out past the edge of your sight are all keeping the exact same unhurried appointment with the same distant world, orbit after orbit, without a single one of them ever falling out of step. Notice, if you can, how the ice around you seems to understand this too. Each flake, each drifting curl of frost, each slow-turning lump of ancient water keeps its place in the blizzard not through any effort of its own, but simply because it is held in the same falling as everything beside it. There is no reaching, no straining to keep formation. There is only the shared, wide, patient arc, and every small, bright body finding itself exactly where the arc has placed it, mile after mile, for longer than memory. You could stop thinking of yourself as a visitor moving through this storm and start feeling yourself as one more flake within it, unhurried, accompanied, entirely without weight, folded into a motion so large and so steady that from inside it, it no longer feels like motion at all. Let your breathing settle into that same rhythm now, if it wants to, not because anything here requires it of you, but because there is nothing left that needs your attention pulled elsewhere. No ground to brace against, no pace to keep, only this long, cradled fall around a world that has been holding its blizzard of snow in place since long before there was anyone to drift through it, and will keep holding it long after tonight's small visit ends. You can let your thoughts loosen. You can let your grip, whatever grip you were still, without noticing, keeping on the evening behind you, begin to open. There is a particular kind of relief available only to a body that has stopped being asked to hold itself up, And you are inside that relief now, whether or not you have found the word for it yet. Every orbit is, in its own way, a promise kept without effort. The promise that you will keep falling, and keep being caught by the same falling over and over, without either the fall or the catching ever running out. You do not have to trust the promise. You are already living inside it. The ice around you has been living inside it for longer than any calendar could hold, drifting in this same unbroken loop, weightless, accompanied, asking nothing of the dark that carries it. And it is in that loosened, drifting attention that you start to notice something new taking shape ahead of you in the storm. Not everywhere, not all at once, but here and there, threading through the endless field of ice, the density of the blizzard seems to soften into something thinner, paler, almost hollow. A lane opening where before there was only unbroken snow. At first it might seem like a trick of drowsy eyes, a gap imagined rather than seen. But it persists, this clearing widening gently as your orbit carries you nearer, and beyond it another, and another still, faint corridors of open dark cut clean through the glittering field. Something is moving out there among them, small and steady and patient, tending each opening the way a careful hand tends a part in long hair, and you find yourself wanting, without any hurry at all, to drift close enough to see who is doing the tending. And within that stillness, that sense of resting rather than racing, the clearings ahead begin to widen, and you notice for the first time that the blizzard is not random at all. It only looked like chance from a distance, snow scattered without pattern, drifting without design. Up close, moving with it, you can feel that something is tending this storm, shaping its edges, sweeping its lanes clear. The way a current finds order in a river no one could see was ordered from the bank. The widest of these clearings opens ahead of you now. A dark road cuts straight through the middle of the light, the Cassini division, nearly 5,000 kilometers of near-empty space where the snow simply thins to almost nothing. You drift toward its edge and look down its length, and it feels less like a gap in the storm than a held breath. A place where the blizzard has been asked, ever so patiently, to step aside. The reason is a kind of music, if music can be made of gravity and distance. Far beyond the rings, well outside the last visible flake, the moon Mimas circles Saturn once for every 2 times a particle here would circle if this space were still full of ice. Twice for its once, a plain and simple ratio, the sort of pairing that in music would sound like 2 notes resolving cleanly into each other, an octave apart and yet perfectly matched. Repeated across millions of slow years, that match is enough. Every second time a particle would cross this point, Mimas is pulling from the same direction in its distant orbit. A small tug, added to a small tug, added to a small tug. So quiet you would never feel a single one. So patient that together they have swept a whole lane of the blizzard aside and kept it swept. Drift after drift. For longer than there have been eyes anywhere to watch it happen. Nothing broke. Nothing violent happened here. No collision, no shattering, no sound at all. The ice simply agreed, over unthinkable spans of time, to go elsewhere, the way falling snow will always find the low places and leave the high ones bare, settling into the pattern that costs it the least, again and again, until the pattern is all that remains. You let the current carry you onward, past the division, back into denser snow, drifting with the same unhurried pace as everything around you, and then, near the outer hush of the A-ring, you notice something small moving inside a narrower clearing. A lane only 320 kilometers wide, threading through ice that presses close on either side. This is the Enki Gap, And the small thing keeping it open is a moon barely the size of a low hill, its name Pan, shaped almost like a walnut from the loose ice it has gathered around its own middle over ages of quiet collecting. Ring snow drawn in and settled around its waist until it wears its own small ring like a belt. Pan does not sweep this gap once, from a distance, the way Mimas does. Pan lives inside it, orbiting Saturn along the very center of the clearing it keeps, and as it passes, its faint pull nudges every wandering flake back toward the walls of the gap, tidying the same lane again and again, every single circuit. An unhurried caretaker who has never once left its post and never will. Where it passes, you can see the edges of the gap ripple very slightly, soft scalloped waves in the ice on either side, like the surface of a pond remembering a single small stone dropped in long ago and rippling still. The ring keeping the memory of every pass in a pattern that never quite settles and never quite forgets. Drift a little farther, toward the outer rim of the A-ring, and you find a gap smaller still, barely 40 kilometers across, and in it a moon smaller than Pan, Daphnis, tucked into what is called the Keeler Gap, alone in its own narrow silence. Daphnis does something the others do not. Its orbit tilts and wanders just enough that it does not sit calmly in the center of its lane, but brushes close to the walls of ice on either side as it goes, leaning first toward one edge, then drifting back toward the other. An unhurried sway repeated once every orbit, and where it brushes closest, it lifts the edge of the blizzard bodily upward, kilometer-high waves of ice rising from the flat plain like a hand drawn slowly along a curtain. The fabric rising to follow the fingers and falling again just as gently once they pass, settling back to stillness the moment the small moon has moved on. At certain seasons on Saturn, when the sun sits low along the ring plane at equinox and light rakes sideways across everything, those risen waves throw shadows 100 kilometers long, faint dark lines combed across the bright field of snow, evidence of a moon too small to ever see directly except by the mark of its passing. You do not need to spot Daphnis itself to know it is there. The wave is enough. The shadow is enough. Something this small, working this quietly, leaves proof only in the shape of what it touches, the way a sleeping hand might leave its outline pressed for a while into a pillow. And it is not only these three. Scattered through the densest reaches of the rings, mostly in the outer A-ring where you drift now, are smaller disturbances still, too faint and too small to ever resolve into a shape, moonlets perhaps no larger than a house or a hill, never photographed directly, known only the way you might know a fish had passed beneath still water, not by seeing it, but by the wake it leaves behind, a brief disturbance closing quietly over itself once the fish has gone. These are called the propellers, because the pattern each one stirs into the surrounding ice looks, from above, like the twin blades of an old propeller turning slowly in place, a thinning here, a brightening there, symmetric and small and unmistakably made by something, never by nothing. Dozens of these have been found this way, named almost fondly after distant aviators, each one a tiny caretaker no one has ever truly seen, tending its own private clearings somewhere in the endless field, felt only by the disturbance it leaves in the falling snow around it, a small, precise mark stitched into the blizzard and then softly smoothed again as new flakes drift across it, the way footprints in fresh snow fill slowly back in behind a walker who never once looks back. It is a strange comfort, somehow, to understand that this whole vast blizzard is not chaos being endured, but order being kept. That even the emptiest looking gaps are not accidents, not wounds in the ring, but places being cared for, swept and reswept by small, quiet moons, doing the same unhurried work every single circuit, for longer than memory, without ever needing to hurry or to rest. None of these caretakers are large. None of them would seem, at first glance, capable of shaping anything at all. A walnut-shaped moon, a moonlet the size of a house, a distant cousin circling far outside the rings entirely. And yet between them, working only through patience and repetition and the plainest arithmetic of gravity, they have combed an entire storm of ice into lanes and waves and clean-swept roads, a whole architecture built from nothing more forceful than a great many small, faithful, repeated touches. You drift above it now, the division a dark road below you, the walnut shape of Pan somewhere ahead patrolling its narrow lane, the long faint shadows of Daphnis's waves combing sideways across the ice. And you understand, in the drowsy way understanding arrives just before sleep, that nothing here is loose or careless. Every flake has its place because something, however small, has spent an age making sure of it, the way a single unhurried habit, repeated night after night, can shape a whole life into something calm, without ever once feeling like effort. And as you notice this, the whole scene seems to draw back from you, or you from it, gently, the way a held breath finally releases, not falling away, just widening. The near ice and the little moons and the long thread-like shadows all folding into a larger view, until the gaps in the waves and the propellers are simply texture again. Fine grain within something far too large to take in all at once. You begin to sense, without straining for it, just how much is holding together out here in this quiet dark. A blizzard that never lands, tended by moons you could hold in your arms, wrapped around a planet so vast it barely seems real, and you so small and so safe inside all of it, drifting gently backward now, far enough to see the whole shape of the thing, how enormous it is, and somehow, in that same breath, how delicate. And as the view keeps widening, as the little moons and their tidy gaps shrink into the pattern of something far larger, let the whole shape of what you are drifting through finally come into view at once. You already know, in your body, that this blizzard has no edges you could ever walk to. Now let the numbers arrive the way starlight arrives, late and softening everything they touch. If you were to lay the rings out end to end, stretching from where you float all the way to the inner edge and out again to the faint outer haze, that distance would carry you most of the way from the Earth to its own moon. Two small worlds, and between them, this, a ribbon of snow so long that light itself takes more than a second to cross it, and you, unhurried, are simply riding along inside that ribbon, weightless, held, and Saturn itself, the golden shoulder this whole blizzard leans against, is so vast that more than 760 Earths could be tucked inside it, nested like breath inside a chest, room upon room upon room. Picture your own homeworld, small and blue and busy, and then picture 760 of them, folded away into the honeyed belly of the planet turning beneath you. That is the scale of the thing you have been circling all this while, a world so enormous that its own gravity bends light paths, tugs moons into their orbits, sculpts a whole storm of ice into rings. And yet all of that glittering blizzard, every flake and boulder and drifting field of frost stretched across a distance longer than the road to the moon, weighs less, altogether, than a single small moon of modest size. Weigh the whole of it, the countless icy bodies, the bright dust, the long cold arcs of snow circling patiently in the dark, and it would not outweigh one modest sphere of rock and ice, one minor world you could nearly hold in your mind as easily as you hold an orange in your palm. Immensity built from almost nothing. A structure vast enough to be seen from another planet, made of pieces so light that a house-sized lump of it could rest in your two hands. There is something in that truth worth letting settle over you slowly, the way frost settles over a window while you sleep and are not there to see it happen. Because if the whole ring system, spanning nearly the distance to the moon, weighs as little as it does, then every single flake inside it, every fleck of ice drifting past you at a few gentle millimeters a second, weighs closer to nothing than to anything at all. And you are one of those flakes now, in this dream, in this quiet hour of the night. One small drifting piece inside an almost weightless immensity. Let that thought loosen something in your shoulders. You are not carrying this blizzard. You were never asked to hold up the rings, or steer them, or keep them from scattering into the dark. You are simply riding inside a structure so much larger and so much calmer than you that your entire presence changes nothing about it at all. Think of how strange that pairing really is if you sit with it long enough. A length longer than the gap between two worlds. A body big enough to swallow more Earths than you could ever count while drifting off to sleep, one by one, the way some people count sheep or breaths or heartbeats. And beside all of that, a weight so slight that it could be folded into one modest moon and still leave room to spare. Vastness here is not the same as heaviness. Bigness is not the same as burden. The rings prove it simply by existing this way, spread thin and wide and nearly weightless across a span of sky longer than most minds can hold in a single thought. And somehow that thinness is not a fault in the design. It is the whole hushed point of it. A blizzard can be immense and remain almost nothing, and still be enough to catch the light of a distant sun and turn it into something a small blue world, far away, would one day learn to call beautiful. This is, in its own way, a kind of relief that rarely gets named during the daylight hours, when everything asks to be measured and managed and made larger than it is. Here, in the hush between Saturn and its rings, size works differently. To be small here is not to be overlooked. It is to be excused, plainly, without any ceremony, from the job of carrying anything. The planet carries its own gravity. The rings carry their own slow choreography, worked out over ages before you arrived and long after you drift onward. Mimas keeps its resonance. Pan keeps its gap swept clean. None of it needs you to manage a single grain of it, and so, for these few borrowed minutes, neither do you. Let your body take that in the way it takes in a held breath finally released. Being small, out here, is not smallness in the way it sometimes feels on ordinary nights, thin and unnoticed and easy to forget. It is a different smallness altogether. The smallness of a single snowflake inside a blizzard so wide it wraps most of the way around a giant world, held by a gravity that does not need to be earned or maintained, only received. Being this small means something enormous and unhurried has already agreed to hold you. And being held, truly held, by something that will not tire and will not drop what it carries, means you are finally fully allowed to stop holding yourself up. You can let your weight go. You can let your thoughts go loose and untethered, the way the ice around you drifts without ever needing to arrive anywhere. Nothing here requires your effort. Nothing here is waiting on you to keep it steady. Somewhere on the small blue world you left behind, being little often means being easy to miss, easy to pass over, one voice folded into millions of louder ones. Out here, the arithmetic flips entirely. Smallness beside something this enormous is not a diminishment at all. It is an invitation, an opening cut, just your size inside a structure that never asked to be measured against you in the first place. Saturn does not need you to be larger to be worth its keeping. The rings do not require your weight to keep circling exactly as they have circled for longer than any memory you carry. You are already, simply by drifting here, exactly the size this whole moment was built to hold. So let that be the shape of the rest, if rest is what you are sinking toward now. Not the rest of trying to be still, but the rest of being one small, weightless piece inside something too vast and too patient to need your help. Saturn does not notice one flake more or less. The blizzard does not pause to check on you. And that, more than almost anything else you might learn about this place, is the tender gift of it. You can be utterly unnecessary to the workings of something enormous, and yet be entirely welcome inside it. Drift a little looser now. Let your held breath out along with it. There is no test out here, and no ledger. No one is tallying how much space you take up, or whether you are pulling your share of some invisible weight. The rings do not ask their flakes to be useful. They only ask them to keep drifting, at their own unhurried pace, in the direction the whole system is already moving. And that is an easier thing to be asked than almost anything the daylight world tends to ask of you. Out here, usefulness simply is not the currency. Only presence is. Only the plain fact of floating, weightless, inside something larger than any worry you carried with you when this drift began. If a thought about tomorrow tries to surface now, let it drift past the way a stray flake drifts past your shoulder, in no hurry to land, in no need of your attention. It can keep circling on its own orbit, far off, harmless, while you stay here, held, small, unburdened, at the center of all this borrowed enormity. And somewhere in that looseness, a small, soft question might drift up on its own. The kind of question that does not need answering tonight, that you can simply let float beside you like one more flake among the countless others. Where did all of this come from? All this snow, spread across a distance nearly as long as the road to the moon, circling a planet that could swallow 760 worlds like your own and barely notice the weight of any of it. Someone, some question in you, might wonder how a ring this wide and this delicate ever came to be gathered here at all, hovering in perfect unhurried rings around a planet with no ground to catch it. You do not need to reach for the answer. It is only a thread trailing loose in the dark, something to hold on to lightly, the way you might hold the last thought before sleep, not chasing it, only noticing it drift there, patient, unclaimed, waiting for whenever you are ready to follow it back. That soft, drowsy question, where did all this snow come from, drifts with you now, unhurried, the way a thought drifts when there is nowhere it needs to arrive. And the answer, when it comes gently, like the rest of tonight's blizzard. Once, long before you found yourself here, there may have been a single body where all this scattered brightness now floats, a moon perhaps, or a wandering comet, drawn closer and closer to Saturn on some ancient, patient orbit. There is an invisible boundary around every great world, a distance called the Roche limit, inside of which a planet's pull becomes too uneven for a smaller body to hold itself together. One side tugged harder than the other, closer and farther, until the difference becomes too much to bear. Whatever that ancient traveler was, it crossed that boundary. And nothing violent happened, not in the way the word usually means. There was no shattering, no cry, only a slow unbraiding, strand by strand, the way a piece of yarn comes apart if you tug it evenly, without anger, until what was once whole is only thread, and the thread is only snow. One side of that old moon or comet always felt Saturn's pull a fraction more strongly than the other. The near face tugged just a little harder than the far face, and across many patient orbits that small, tender difference was enough. It did not need to be violent to be complete. Saturn did not break its visitor. It simply loved it a little unevenly and let it come undone into brightness, thread after thread spreading out along the same orbit until the orbit itself became a shape, wide and flat and endless, and the brightness has been circling ever since, patient, weightless, unable to fall any further, and unable to leave. You can rest inside that image for a moment. The entire ring plane beneath you, not as something that has always existed, fixed since the birth of the solar system, but as a kind of long, slow exhale, the memory of a single body, spread thin across hundreds of thousands of kilometers, kept bright by its own constant, feather-light collisions. And there is real evidence for this, gathered patiently by the instruments that have visited here before you. The ice is remarkably clean, almost untouched by the dust that drifts through the solar system and would, over billions of years, darken it the way snow at the edge of a road slowly grays. Clean snow is young snow. By that quiet measure, the rings may be far younger than Saturn itself, perhaps only tens of millions of years old, perhaps a few 100 million at most, a blink against the 4.5 billion years the planet has already spent turning in the dark. It is strange and rather wonderful to think that something so vast could also be so new, that dinosaurs may have walked a small blue world nearby under a Saturn that had no rings at all, or only the faint beginning of them, and that what surrounds you now, this whole blizzard, is in cosmic terms freshly fallen. Even the mass of it whispers the same story. Weigh the whole ring plane, every last flake and boulder of it, and it comes to something modest, far less than you might expect for a structure so wide, as though whatever fell apart here was never meant to fill hundreds of thousands of kilometers, and simply spread itself thin, because that is what unbraided thread does when it is given room enough and time enough to drift. And freshly fallen snow, even snow that never lands, does not stay forever. This is the part you can hold loosely, the way you'd hold a fact you already half expected. The blizzard around you, endless as it feels, is not quite eternal. Instruments passing low between the planet and its rings, in the final patient years of one long mission of watching, found something delicate falling out of the ring plane entirely, fine, charged particles of ice, lifted by the same faint electricity that stirs the ghostly spokes, drawn along invisible magnetic lines down into Saturn's own upper atmosphere. Ring rain, it came to be called, and the name suits it. A mist so light it could never be called a storm. Ice giving up its long orbit, one grain at a time, and drifting inward and down, into the golden haze far below you, disappearing the way a snowflake disappears the instant it touches something warm. The little watching craft that found it spent its final patient years doing exactly what you are doing now, tracing the same wide loops between the planet and the innermost edge of the ring plane, close enough to taste the space no one had ever tasted before. And what it found, spread across that gap, was this constant faint fall, tons of ice each hour, ferried down along invisible threads of Saturn's own magnetic field, feeding the amber clouds far below with a rain that never once made a sound. It happens too slowly for any single night, even a night as long as this one, to notice, but measured across the ages, it means the rings are losing themselves, unhurried, ounce by ounce. A rain so faint it would take perhaps another 100 million years, maybe longer, to empty the blizzard entirely and leave Saturn bare again, wearing only the pale memory of the light that once wrapped it. There is something worth resting on here. Inside the thread that has carried you through this whole slow crossing, a blizzard that never lands is still, in its own way, settling, not falling in any way you could see or feel. Nothing lurches, nothing rushes. The flake beside you keeps its unhurried pace exactly as it has for millions of years. And yet, grain by grain, the storm is quietly giving itself back to the world it circles. It is one of the tender truths this place seems to hold everywhere you look, that stillness and change are not opposites here, that something can feel permanent to you tonight, permanent for your whole life and every life after it, and still be only a long, patient chapter in something else's much longer story. You do not need to hold that thought tightly. Let it settle the way the ice settles, at its own unhurried pace, somewhere at the back of a mind that is already growing heavier, already sinking a little further into rest. And even as one edge of the blizzard drifts inward and away, another edge is quietly being born. Far outside the bright rings that have carried you tonight, past even the faint outer, reaches most eyes would call empty. A small moon named Enceladus turns in the dark, no wider than a modest county back on that small blue world you came from, its whole surface wrapped in ice, so clean and so bright it throws back nearly all the sunlight that reaches it. Beneath that frozen crust, warmed just enough by the patient flexing of Saturn's pull, a hidden ocean stirs, dark and salted, and entirely its own, sealed away from the cold above by many kilometers of ice. And through long cracks near its southern pole, 4 of them, nicknamed with the same warmth you might use for old familiar streets, plumes of ice rise into space, fine as breath on a cold night, hundreds of kilometers tall, and scatter outward to feed a vast faint ring of their own. The E-ring, gossamer and wide. Stretching far past every other band you have crossed tonight, the gentlest snow of all, made new again and again by a moon that never stops giving. So the story is not only one of ending. While one part of this great blizzard rains down and away toward the golden clouds below, another part is always being born somewhere else in the dark, fed by a small world's ongoing breath. Loss and renewal, here, are simply 2 names for the same unhurried motion. Release on one side of the planet, gift on the other, and you, drifting somewhere between them, part of a system that is always both losing itself and beginning again. It is a great deal to have learned about a place so far away. A lost moon unbraided into snow, a rain no one can hear, a smaller moon nearby breathing new ice into the dark to make up for what is lost. And lying here, wrapped in all of it, weightless and warm, you might let yourself wonder, drowsily, how anyone ever came to know any of it at all. How creatures so small, standing on so distant and solid a world, their feet planted in grass or stone, their nights lit only by candles and then by dim electric bulbs, ever looked up into a sky crowded with ordinary points of light and singled out one particular gleam, one that did not quite behave like the others, and wondered, and kept wondering, patiently, across centuries, passing the question from one lifetime to the next like something precious and unfinished, until at last they understood that what they were looking at was not a star at all, but a world wearing a blizzard of its own. A world exactly like the one you are drifting through now. And the answer, if your drowsy mind wants one before it lets the question go, is not a single moment of discovery, but a long relay of watchers, passed from eye to eye across 4 centuries, each one adding a few more grains of understanding to the snow drifting around you now. It begins in the autumn of 1610, with a man in Padua bending over a spyglass he had built himself, a tube of polished lenses no wider than his arm. He turns it towards Saturn, expecting a point of light, plain and round like every other wandering star he has already charted, and finds instead something his instrument cannot quite resolve. The planet seems to have handles, he thinks, or ears. 2 pale companions pressed close against its sides like cups on a vase, or perhaps 2 small moons standing so near the planet's rim that they seem almost fused to it. He has no word for what he is seeing, because no one has ever needed one before. The vocabulary of the sky has not yet caught up with what his own eyes are showing him. He sketches it carefully in his notebook, returns to it night after night, and then, strangest of all, the ears begin to thin over the following months, growing fainter and fainter until within a couple of years they vanish altogether, as though the planet has quietly swallowed them in its sleep. He dies without ever learning why, the mystery left folded inside his own drawings for someone else to open. What his lenses were too faint to show him was the truth you already carry inside tonight's journey. That he was looking at the blizzard edge on, at that impossibly thin sheet of ice appearing to disappear into a line of light, exactly as you saw it yourself on your way in, exactly as it must have looked to him across all that distance, bewildering and brief, and gone. 4.5 decades pass before the puzzle loosens. A young astronomer in the Netherlands grinds his own lenses even finer, builds a telescope with far less distortion than any before it, and in 1655 turns it on the same pale ears and finally sees them for what they are. Not attachments, not 2 small moons pressed to the planet's sides, but a single thin ring, flat and detached, encircling Saturn on every side without ever touching it anywhere. He writes in careful, almost hesitant Latin of a ring that is nowhere connected to the body of the planet, tilted at an angle to our line of sight, which is why it seemed to widen and narrow and vanish over the years like a slow, silent eye opening and closing across a great distance. For the first time, a human mind has understood, however dimly, and from however far away, the shape of the thing you have been drifting through all this long night, a halo of snow suspended around a world held by nothing but its own motion, unhurried, patient, indifferent to whether anyone below was watching. 20 years later, in 1675, a mathematician and astronomer working in Paris turns an even sharper instrument on that same ring and notices something finer yet. A dark thread running through the pale band, a narrow gap separating what had seemed a single sheet into 2. It is the same division you passed earlier tonight, swept open by the patient tug of a small moon far beyond it, though he could not have known that yet. He simply sees the seam and gives his name to the shadow between 2 drifts of endless snow, and for 2 centuries afterward, that is where understanding rests, a ring, or perhaps 2, solid enough to look like polished bands of light circling a golden world. It takes a mathematician in Scotland, working not with a telescope, but with pages of equations, to unravel what those bands truly were made of. In 1859, sitting with pen and paper rather than a lens, entering a competition that asked simply for an explanation of how the rings could endure, he tests the old assumption that they might be solid, a single hoop of rock or metal turning around the planet, and finds, line by line, that no such structure could ever survive its own motion. The strain of one edge moving faster than the other would tear a solid ring apart within moments, or crumple it inward, or fling its pieces out into the dark. The only arrangement that could hold together, his calculations show, is a ring made of countless small, separate bodies, each one following its own unhurried orbit at its own steady speed, close enough together to look from a distance like a single continuous sheet of light. He never sees a single ice flake himself. He proves the blizzard exists using nothing but numbers, sitting at a desk on a small blue world, more than 1 billion kilometers away, more than a century before any camera would confirm that he was right down to the smallest detail. That what looks like a solid band of gold from far away is, up close, exactly what you have spent this whole night drifting through, snow within snow within snow. For a long while after that, the rings remain a mathematical certainty and a beautiful, distant blur until the patient robots begin to arrive. The first reaches Saturn in the autumn of 1979, a small spacecraft called Pioneer 11, sent out a dozen years earlier with no guarantee it would survive the journey, threading a narrow gap in the rings on its way past and sending home the first close photographs anyone had ever seen, faint and grainy, of the world you have been visiting tonight. Barely a year later, in November of 1980, and again in August of 1981, two sister spacecraft named Voyager sweep past in turn. Their cameras finding structure no one had imagined, thousands of separate ringlets nested within the rings, subtle shifts of color, the first pale glimpses of the ghostly spokes drifting across the B-ring like breath on glass. Each spacecraft passes only once, gathering what it can in the space of a few hurried days, then continues on its way into the dark beyond, carrying its portrait of Saturn out toward the edge of everything. It is not until 2004 that patience finally wins out over the hurried glimpse. A spacecraft named for the man who first found the gap in the rings settles into orbit around Saturn and simply stays, circling and circling for 13 patient years, watching the seasons turn, watching storms rise and fade on the golden clouds below, watching the rings tilt slowly toward the sun and away again, watching moonlets stir their faint wakes through the drifting ice. 13 years is longer than most things get to watch anything, and the spacecraft uses every one of them gently, sending home enough images and measurements to fill a small library, teaching us at last about the rain of ice falling softly into the planet, about the delicate age of the rings, about moons no bigger than a room shepherding gaps you have already drifted through tonight. And when its fuel finally begins to run low, rather than let it drift forever as one more unplanned piece of debris among the ice, its keepers choose a slower kind of ending. A series of final dives, 22 of them, threading the narrow, unmapped space between the cloud tops and the innermost ring. Closer to Saturn than anything built by human hands had ever traveled, gathering one last, unhurried harvest of readings before easing itself down into the golden clouds themselves, becoming, in its very last moments, part of the same planet it had spent 13 years quietly getting to know. That is the whole of it, really, a telescope maker puzzled by ears that would not stay put. A lens grinder patient enough to see the ring beneath them, a division found and named, a proof written in pure mathematics before any eye could confirm it, and then robot after robot sent out across the dark on one-way journeys, taking their unhurried turns to watch. None of them rushed. Each simply added its own small, faint layer of seeing to the layer before, the way frost adds itself, one crystal at a time, to a window pane overnight. And all of that long relay of attention was only ever in service of a single, simple wish to understand a little more clearly the pale, drifting light you are already resting inside tonight. The blizzard is far below you now, and farther away with every breath, no longer a storm around you, but a soft band stretched thin across the dark. The way a river seen from very high above stops looking like water and starts looking like a single pale thread laid across the land. Saturn itself has dimmed to a low gold ember at the center of that thread, its motion slowing with your own breathing, its light growing fainter with every heartbeat. The countless small flakes of ice that once seemed close enough to touch now folding themselves back into a single faraway line of light, patient, unhurried, still turning long after your eyes have closed. Tonight has been about the far approach, about Saturn resting in the dark at a distance so safe that its whole enormous body could be held, without any strain, inside one long, unhurried breath. Tonight has been about Into the Blizzard, about the discovery that a ring is never really one thing, only a hush of countless small ices, each tumbling at its own patient pace. None of them falling anywhere in particular, all of them simply turning. Tonight has been about the clockwork of ice, about gaps swept clean by moons too modest to notice their own influence, about waves rippling through frozen rubble, the way a held breath ripples through a body settling toward sleep. And tonight has been about deep time and quiet knowing, about a ring system that may be far younger than the planet wearing it, a passing decoration rather than a permanent crown, and about the long patient chain of human eyes and instruments that learned, across centuries, how to see something so faint and so far. None of this needs anything from you tonight. You don't need to remember which moon shepherds which gap, or how many 100 feet of open sky separate one ice flake from its neighbor, or which century first resolved that faint golden line into countless separate pieces. You don't need to hold on to a single fact from the last 2 hours. The rings will keep circling Saturn whether you remember them or not, keep tumbling in their unhurried blizzard whether you are awake to picture them or already gone into sleep, folded somewhere far past thought. That is the tender gift of a system this old and this vast. It was never waiting on your attention, and it isn't waiting on it now. You can set it all down. If your eyes are already closed, that's exactly where they should be. Another quiet exploration is already waiting on the screen, ready to begin on its own when this one ends. So there's nothing to reach for and nothing to decide. Just let it begin on its own, low in the room, while you stay exactly where you are, drifting the way a flake of ring ice drifts, going nowhere needing nowhere to land. And if a thought is still awake somewhere in you, let it be only this, loose and unanswered, of everything drifting past tonight. Which flake of ice would you have wanted to reach out and hold just for a moment before letting it go again? You don't have to answer. You don't even have to finish the thought. Just let it hang there, the way ice hangs in that wide patient orbit, turning without effort, asking nothing of the dark around it. Feel your breath continuing on its own, the way it has all night, unhurried and low, requiring nothing from you now. Feel the bed beneath you the way that vast ring plane feels its own tender balance, held not by grip, but by a kind of trust older than any of us, older than the planet itself. Let your thoughts loosen and separate the way the rings themselves loosen into countless small, silent pieces, each one free to drift at its own patient pace, none of them needing to arrive anywhere at all, none of them ever colliding hard enough to matter. Let the room soften. Let the dark hold you the way distance holds a ringed planet, completely, without strain, without end. There is nowhere else to be. There is nothing left to carry. Just this long tumbling hush, just this easy descending drift, just the faint familiar pull toward rest, drawing you down and down, gently, the way ice is drawn, unhurried, into sleep. flake by flake, breath by breath, until there is only the dark, and the rings, and you, somewhere between them, no longer falling, only resting. Sleep well.